Okay, I think we're ready to get started. My name is Max Wilbert, and I'm here with Bob Doublin from Seattle. And Bob has been doing some research into a pretty nasty neo-Nazi white supremacist guy named Harold Covington, who lives here in the Northwest and has written a series of somewhat popular novels sort of fictionalizing the idea of a white supremacist takeover of the Pacific Northwest. And so today I'm going to speak with Bob and ask him some questions about this series so that anti-racists and community activists in our area can learn from these people and what they're proposing, what they're doing, how they're organizing, the ideas that they're spreading. I think it's definitely a case of know your enemy. So, Bob, thanks for coming, and tell us about how you found out about this book and where you learned about it and how you decided to read it and what you started to find.
Well, back around 2000 or so, I was doing some research on white supremacy groups and kept coming across his name in the groups that I read. I just sort of went on Yahoo, and they had several groups, and I just sort of started looking at the what they wrote. And he was constantly saying that it's time that we needed to the movement. He's been practically a lifelong Nazi, white supremacist. He's my age. He was born in 1953, and he said that it's time for them to take it seriously. He was very dissatisfied with what he considered to be the lack of professionality of the movement. And apparently back in the 70s there had been suggestions that the Northwest should be taken over and made into a Aryan homeland. Apparently it's not an idea original to him. And he finally decided he has kind of lived in several different countries, was active in fighting for Rhodesia against the native black movement for independence and a dismantling of the apartheid there. And he also was involved with he was born in North Carolina. He was involved with a neo-Nazi group there where they were the ones that did the Greensboro massacre in the late 70s, I think it was. They attacked a communist demonstration and killed like 5 or 6 people. He fled to Britain and lived there for probably about a decade or more, in Ireland also. Then he came home in the 90s, and he, like he said, he phrased it, he came home in the late 90s, moved to the Northwest, and decided to write a series of novels describing the revolt and setting up of an Aryan homeland here. And he published his first novel around 2003 called The Hill of the Ravens. It's set like 40 years in the future after the revolt, and it's a sort of a murder or a mystery where they had successfully won their homeland and actually expanded the area. At first they were only doing the states of Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. They eventually had most of Montana, Wyoming, half of Northern California, most of British Columbia and Alberta, and the southern half of Alaska. And what he did was had someone looking back on the revolt and discussing something that went wrong, and he was trying to solve the problem and things. And it was sort of the first novel. The second novel was one, A Distant Thunder, where it's the life story of one of the soldiers in the revolt, who lived in around the Centralia area in Washington State, and looking back when he was like in his 80s or something, and talking about all the things that they did, what brought him to becoming a member of the, they called it the NVA, the Northwest Volunteer Army, and talked about the strategy they had for how they would go about the revolt. And then the third novel is called A Mighty Fortress, and it's about the negotiations that eventually they forced the United States government to undergo with them, where they won their independence. And throughout the novels, he does talk a lot about how to set up an army, how to set up an underground army, how to do a revolt using very low numbers of people, internal security, how to obtain weapons, various things that, it's the series of novels are just full of him going into great detail on actions that they did,
Right.
Sabotage.
Would it be correct to say that your reading of these novels is that they're basically a how-to manual for
Yes.
white supremacists?
Yes.
Guys as a novel. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Very much so. It's a how-to manual. Let's see. And also, he would discuss things like how to make peace with local law enforcement. That they would leave you alone, so that only it would be because most of these people who revolt were people who lived in the area. So it was about white, of course. I mean, the only people that they would allow to live further in the thing were anyone that was considered a white person, anyone of the Jewish faith, any homosexuals, any non-white race, like either anyone that wouldn't be considered white, black, Asian. They were told to leave or die, and there would be things to do things they did to. He would discuss how they wouldn't just indiscriminately bomb things because they wanted to remain in the favor of the local white community. So they were very careful about not having collateral damage, as he phrased it, and they wouldn't just simply start, slaughtering people, or they wouldn't blow up, train stations or something, because that would just, he recognized that would alienate their future people that they wanted to have be part of the state.
Just a clarifying question, Bob, is so Covington, do you get a sense from the books and your reading that he's sort of a classic, white supremacist in the sense of, Winston Churchill and this long line of white supremacists who just believe that the white race is inherently superior and therefore should inherit the world, basically?
Oh yes,
to
definitely.
that ideology. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. I, actually, he was not an admirer of Winston Churchill. He felt that Churchill was a traitor because he fought Nazi Germany. And but as far as the whole attitude of the world, I mean, one of his characters actually comes out and says it, and then they pass around this manual that sets out their political ideology, and on the very first page it says the world belongs to white people. That's basically what they say, and that everything is there for our taking, for white people's taking, and that if the thing that kind of struck me is the incredible amount of kind of paranoia, that white people are the only oppressed people on the face of the earth. That if they don't get 150% of the world, then that means they get zero. And not only that, if somebody tries to stop them from, conquering other people, taking whatever they want, whenever they want it, it means that the people trying to stop them are dedicated to completely exterminating the white race. I mean, it's really that bald.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a great analysis the other day in response to some of Trump's latest moves, basically saying that, in Nazi Germany, the Germans made these outrageous claims, and the point wasn't, you see this phenomenon of these right-wingers making these crazy claims, exemplified by Trump currently at the highest level. He makes these crazy claims, and then you see this rush of liberals and progressives to sort of fact-check him and expose the lies. And the analysis that I saw was talking about how in Nazi Germany they did a similar thing, and the person who made the analysis was pointing out that the point is not the truth. The point is to construct a narrative that allows you to do what you want to do. And,
yes.
I think that we underestimate the power of propaganda at our own peril. A lot of people are going to eat that stuff up, no matter how outlandish and nonsensical it sounds to most of us.
Oh, definitely. And that was a Hannah Arendt in the origins of totalitarianism. And I was thinking over the last couple of days, I was so glad I saw that meme, because that just fit everything that I was thinking. Because the incredibly vicious and exaggerated beyond all bounds of realism, the stereotypes of black people. All blacks are ignorant. They're stupid. All black men are rapists, and their sole desire is to rape white women. And the homosexuals, every one of them are child molesters, and their sole desire is to get children so that they can then abuse them sexually. And the same thing with Jewish people. There's in the first novel that I read, just right this kind of series here in A Distant Thunder, they assassinate a Supreme Court Chief Justice in the Northwest, and they lay out in detail exactly what they were going to do. How they were going to, their security, how they would set up all their vehicles and stuff. And when they actually succeeded, but it was like the way he portrayed this guy, like he was some kind of demon from the pit of hell. And
right.
That, it was just, wow. So all these things were, it's so overblown and over the top, but
right.
It's stuff that people just would, a lot of these people just really buy into it.
Right. Well, it seems to me like this is what we're seeing now, and what you're talking about in this book is the logical conclusion of the systematic racism that pervades our culture and the mass media. I mean, we've seen, since 9/11, we've seen this intensive demonization of Arabic peoples and Muslim peoples, and just the other day we had this white supremacist shooter 2 days ago in Canada go into a mosque and kill a bunch of people. And of course, there's been many more white supremacist terrorist attacks and killings in the United States than from anyone else. And so, even the sort of mainstream, what people might call centrist, or even the liberal media in this, the so-called quote unquote liberal media, which is actually a right-wing media that we have in this country, is absolutely perpetuating and contributing to these things by just changing the entire climate and the conversation from being one about ideology and enculturation and the problems, the very real problems of patriarchal religions, both Islam and Christianity and many other religions that have a tendency to create these ideologues and demagogues who are going out and doing terrible things in the world, and instead changing those conversations to being about race and being about, and being about these things. And to me, it's no surprise. It kind of seems like, with Trump, we're seeing the chickens come home to roost of this sort of neoliberalism that we've had that's dominated the United States for a number of decades now.
And as just a sort of monkey wrench in the ideological smooth sailing of it all, Covington thinks actually supports Islam in the sense that he admires them, even though he won't let them live in the homeland. He admires them because they stand up to Israel. And so he makes that distinction. And it's quite a heavy undercurrent or subtext throughout the entire series. And he also, much as we think that it's capitalism, when it comes time for him to talk about the economic system that they set up and the social system that they set up, the last thing he likes is capitalism. He thinks it's thoroughly materialistic. He thinks it's based on greed, and that it's one of the things that has destroyed the Aryan race. That he has no love at all for it, and thinks that whether or not he can do that, that's another question. He thinks that it's possible. He takes it as a third economic system. He actually, he considers himself a national socialist. That's what we need to. And so there is a heavy element of socialism in the system that he wants to set up in the homeland. But of course, whatever, that's fine. People can, all the criticisms and stuff of whether that's possible. That's fine. I'm not up on that enough to really say. But for him, the important thing, he talks about. There's one character. They're doing something. They're going to assassinate someone or something, and they go into this apartment and they find this old guy who was a veteran, and he was living on dog food because Social Security was destroyed, and he thought that was a horrible thing. And all the Aryan old people are left to rot, are left to die of starvation and want. And he definitely, at least in his words, criticizes that. And I think that's one thing that needs to be dealt with. Explicitly acknowledged and diffused.
Right.
Is that, emphasize that, that simply won't happen. That the type of philosophy that he wants to set up just won't work for, they just won't do that. But he seems to say in the novels that, well, yeah, everyone has a job. Instead of all these capitalists bringing in third world workers and to drive down wages for white Americans, they won't do that. They won't allow that, and so that doesn't happen. And people, if I understood, how he was saying it, it's like healthcare was, free. You didn't have to worry about that. Education was something that just was done because that's what you needed in order to have a strong Aryan race.
Right.
So, it's kind of like he took Hitler's, there were some things that they tried to do. He thought that was more real than what, the historians have come up with, have been able to find. That, there was actually a caring for the particular race that was, living in, the Germans. And so, it's maybe it's it's probably a fantasy because, I certainly can agree with that. But it's like he's saying, he's giving something to an illusion to the white people, and that would be a way to suck them in to support them. That, hey, all we need to do is get rid of the Jews. All we need to do is kick out the muds, third world people, or whatever, whatever words they use, and things will be rosy for the white race. He does admit. So that's why, we need to kind of acknowledge that, but, kind of find ways to say, hey, that's not going to happen, So, yeah, go ahead. What were you?
Well, it makes me think just of how, supposedly, from what I've read, a lot of the Nazi officers who run the concentration camps were really nice families, and they'd go home and they'd treat their kids great and they'd treat their wife great, and it just sort of speaks to, the banality of evil, and how it's relatively easy, to deceive human beings into believing an ideology that will have them committing atrocities. And
oh, yeah.
without any self-reflection and with sort of a fully intact internal sense of morality that makes sense to them.